Hi! So I'm kind of obsessed with the Amazing Digital Circus. It has been a show that has really hooked me for so many different reasons. I think the concept of the show is pretty horrifying, the same way that the concept of the show like Severance is horrifying. But also with that, I think the characters are very endearing, the animation is so unique, and the themes and metaphors that the show has presented have really stuck with me. I knew that I wanted to talk with y'all about this show, especially now that I have paid $20 to sit in a theater and cry over that finale. But I just didn't quite know how I wanted to talk about it. I have seen so much discourse and so many interesting analyses from the digital circus community, especially with video essays, my favorite being How the Amazing Digital Circus Echoes Its Inspiration, a video essay about how this show showcases its original inspiration, the post-apocalyptic sci-fi short story by Harlan Ellison, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Don't need to scream if you ain't got a mouth.
But we're not here to talk about someone else's takes. No, we're here to talk about mine. So I don't really want to waste y'all's time with a lengthy introduction about how I came about making this video. Basically, what I decided to do was just handpick some of my favorite moments that have stuck with me, really impacted with me, and just sit down with y'all and take a deeper look at them and talk about my feelings and thoughts on them. So, let's get into it. So, for context, this is the scene where Pomni and Gummy Goo slip behind the map of the Candy Canyon adventure, and Gummy Goo ends up finding out that he is an NPC. He ends up seeing all of the standby figurines, including himself, and begins to demand answers out of Pomni.
I want you to tell me exactly what I am.
I think what first got me about this scene was how terrified I would be to have this kind of realization. To suddenly learn that every memory you've ever had, every relationship or connection you have ever formed, and any purpose you once truly believed that you had was all pre-constructed. Fake.
My life, my memories, my friends. So fake.
But it also begs a rather interesting question for me. What does it actually mean to be real? Like, if something is fake, but is able to perfectly mimic in every meaningful way the thing that it is replicating, well then, what is the significant difference? Like, of course there are differences we can point to. One is the original, one is the replica, one was naturally born, and one was artificially made. But do those differences actually matter? You know, like in terms of moral consideration, for example, I really do struggle to find a way why they should. Like, when we think about morality, the principles and values that guide us to distinguish from right and wrong, I like to look at things through the perspective of sentientism, the capacity to experience, feel, and perceive subjective states like pain, suffering, and pleasure is the baseline for moral consideration. So if something possesses certain qualities like being able to feel, form relationships, develop an identity of oneself, and experience grief, well then, what meaningful distinction remains? It reminds me a lot, actually, of the video game Detroit Become Human and its exploration of personhood. Androids in this world are designed to be practically perfect replicas of humans, all for the purpose of serving as assistants, property, and overall merchandise for humans. But many androids begin having emotional awakenings called deviancy, which is caused through extreme shock, trauma, or deep empathy for others. They exhibit all of the things that we associate with humanity: love, fear, self-determination, grief, hope, and the desire to survive. The best example I can think of is with Kara's character, one of the protagonists. Kara's character in specific serves as a housemaid and a caregiver to a little girl who's being physically abused by her father. She develops a maternal instinct over her, and it is what causes her to break her programming of obedience, gaining full self-awareness and free will. So if they think like us, if they feel like us, if they suffer like us, well then what gives us the right to see them as inferior or less worthy of the moral consideration that we feel we deserve? Like, are humans really just humans because we're flesh and bone? Or is there something deeper to us that makes us human? Pomni does not see Gummy Goo as code or some kind of obstacle. No, she sees him as someone who is in pain, suffering, who feels like they are alone and like they do not matter. And because she recognizes that suffering as real, well then therefore the empathy she extends to him gets to be real too. She offers him the chance to leave the adventure and join them at the circus, to become more than just what he was assigned to be or the role he was meant to play. And I think the exchange that's had between the two of them is very beautiful. He asks her why she even cares, and Pomni delivers a very powerful reply.
Why are you trying to cheer me up? How does this benefit you at all?
I guess I just don't want you to feel like you're nothing. I don't want anybody to feel like that.
But I'm not even a real person. Would I even belong?
I'm sure you wouldn't belong any less than me. And I could use a friend.
A friend?
And I think deep down, you also recognize how real he was too. I mean, what else made this following scene so heartbreaking?
Wait, what?
Man, 7 years of computer science for this, huh?
Early on in this show, we learn that one of the major themes is existential dread. Our characters are trapped in a virtual void where all once perceived meaning and purpose has been completely erased and replaced with a world of absurdity. They all struggle constantly to hold on and maintain their humanity, or experience the consequence of abstracting into pure chaos. But I feel what really captures this theme is a conversation that is had between Kinger and Pomni when they are trapped in literal hell together in one of Kane's adventures. After experiencing more trauma than anyone should reasonably have to endure, Pomni starts to break down. And Kinger offers her comfort in understanding how she may be feeling.
I know how I can feel in this circus. Sometimes it all just feels pointless.
Yeah.
And what makes this line so interesting to me is how Kinger's words can very easily apply to our world just as much as it applies to the digital circus world. If you're not religious, well, I'd bet at some point in your life you've been confronted with the realization that our universe does not come with a predefined purpose. And just like the residents of the circus, things happen to us in our lives that are completely out of our control. People leave, we lose things, we experience heartbreak, trauma, and uncertainty, and all of that really sucks when it feels random, or like the universe is indifferent to you. It's terrifying. But what's powerful to me is that Kinger does not try to solve Pomni's problems by telling her that everything happens for a reason, or that there is some grand cosmic plan waiting for her around the corner. No, he offers her something much smaller, and, in my opinion, much more profound. And that is the idea that meaning is not something to be found, but rather it's something that we can create.
But it's not. Not if you have people who care about you.
Existentialism is often confused and misunderstood for nihilism. Nihilism is looking at the universe with no inherent meaning and therefore concluding that any meaning is just an illusion. But existentialism is looking at the same universe, but drawing an entirely different conclusion. An existentialist would say, if there is no predefined meaning, well then it is our freedom to create our own. If that seems a little confusing, I like to look at it through this analogy. A nihilist would look at a blank canvas and despair at the fact that there is no painting. An existentialist would look at the same blank canvas, pick up a paintbrush, and paint. The characters of the Amazing Digital Circus are constantly confronted with absurdity, and the idea that they are in a world where they have very little perceived control. And each one of them has to decide how they are going to deal with that. They can treat it like no actions or behaviors truly matter, like Jax. They can go mad over obsessing over trying to find an escape for it all, like Kaufmo. Or in Kinger's case, he creates meaning by holding on to good memories. That is why he is in darkness so often, after all, for it is the place where he feels most connected to a very important memory for him.
I'm normally not too good with memories, but being surrounded by darkness always brings me back to a certain time. Right after my wife had abstracted. I don't recall the exact string of events, but we both ended up in the fort together. She wasn't the same as before, but she was calm enough to touch one last time. It's not the most cheerful memory, but it's one I at least have control over.
Kinger is one of the original people trapped in the digital circus, and he is the one that has lasted the longest out of everyone who has entered. And that is partly due to the fact that he did go insane and that created some kind of twisted mental shield for him. But also, I do find it very interesting how he went insane in those 9 years before Ragatha showed up, instead of plummeting into despair and abstracting. And I find that coming from a strength within him from the good memories that he used as an anchor.
Good memories can do a lot. Hold on to them. And cherish the people around you. You never know when they'll be gone.
When life gets inevitably difficult, good memories can be a reminder that not everything has always been bad. If you are going through depression or loneliness, grief, uncertainty, it can be pretty easy to feel like things have always been this way and that they're always going to feel this way. But the beauty of good memories is that they act as proof that there have been moments in your life worth living for, and therefore, maybe there can be more of those in the future. That's why, to Kinger, good memories are so important, as well as cherishing the people that good memories can be made with. I thought a lot about this following line.
In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved.
He's not just making some random moral statement, no. He is talking about the thing that he believes truly hurts people the most. When we think about abstraction in the Amazing Digital Circus, it's very often the result from one losing themselves, becoming overwhelmed by hopelessness, isolation, despair, and an ultimate inability to cope with their reality. And Kinger has seen constantly what has happened when people are left alone with those feelings. And to Kinger, that is the deepest wound you can inflict on another person, because it is the thing that attacks the very thing that helps people survive difficult circumstances, their connection to others. He shows Pomni that even in a world as absurd and cruel as the circus, human connection still matters. And to Kinger, it might be the thing that matters the most. Kinger is talking about memories as an anchor, things that remind us of who we are, those that love us, and the things that really do matter to us. Memories become proof that the connections that we formed are still real, and even after the moment is long gone, those memories still remain, and perhaps that can be enough to carry us forward.
If we leave and we go back to the circus, you're just gonna go back to being crazy. You're not gonna remember any of this, are you?
Don't worry about me. As long as you remember it, things will be okay. You're very strong, Pomni. And I know you'll be able to get through this. You feeling all right?
I didn't have an abusive or berating parent like Ragatha did, but I do understand what it's like to be a people pleaser, as I'm sure many of us are, since it can manifest in so many different ways. Ragatha takes on the role of being the supportive one, something that stems from her aversion to conflict and her deep need for people to like her. Ragatha's character was a rather uncomfortable mirror being held up to me, but I think this conversation between her and Kinger really impacted me in the way that I needed to be impacted. In this episode, all of the characters are teamed up in a battle royale style shootout, and Ragatha and Kinger are the first people to get out, leaving them alone with each other. Kinger notices from Ragatha's silence that there is something weighing on her, and so he questions her.
You want to talk about it?
I think I might have failed Pomni. Just like I failed Jax. I tried too hard to get on their good side, and then I just end up pushing them away. And then they end up hating me.
When Kinger tries to reassure her that no one hates her, she doubles down. And I did find it very interesting how much she cared about how she was being perceived by everyone, especially someone like Jax, someone who doesn't really get along with anyone, and someone that she doesn't even like. There are many different ways to react to the idea that someone or some people don't like you. You could try to ignore it. You could be mad about it. You could not care. Or you could take the route that many people do when they have social anxiety and people-pleasing tendencies, and that is to put the blame back on yourself, which she does. And Kinger recognizes this, especially when Ragatha goes on and starts to berate herself for not teaming up with Pomni.
Oh, why did I do that?
Maybe you just needed a break. It sounds to me like you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be there for everyone, and when you're not, you beat yourself up for it. You said you failed Pomni. Why do you feel that way?
A lot of people don't recognize that people that have people-pleasing tendencies very often have a lot of serious issues when it comes to control. Usually, we associate control issues with people that try to regulate how other people behave. But at the end of the day, control issues is just an improper coping mechanism to things like anxiety and fear. And for the average people pleaser, someone who has a deep fear of conflict and a desperate need for external validation, well, they will often try to regulate how they behave in order to gain control. They will adapt to their environment, try to make everyone happy, all to ensure that conflict and rejection is avoided. It's a soothing thought pattern in a very twisted way, because you'll say to yourself, all of my fears can be avoided so long as I keep myself in check. But there is an inverse to that brings an enormous amount of pressure, because then if conflict does arise, well then, it's your fault too. And we see this very interesting pattern in Ragatha's words then, because she has a very deep fear that people either hate her or will come to hate her eventually. But she doesn't quite think that they're necessarily wrong for feeling that way about her. She gives them all reasons to validate their perceived hatred of her, saying that she tries too hard to get on people's good side and ends up pushing them away, that the reason why Pomni's being pushed away from her is because she's seen through all her tricks and doesn't trust her anymore. All of it comes back to her. It's all on her. And Kinger realizes this pattern. And while some other people might lean towards telling her that people don't really hate her, that doesn't really get at the heart of the problem here. And that is Ragatha's nature to assume herself to be the common denominator.
The way I see it, relationships are two-sided, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to do all the heavy lifting when the other isn't in the mood. We all go through and deal with things differently, and sometimes you just need to let people do things their own way, as long as you're still there when they need you. Giving someone space should never be the same as giving up on them.
Many people pleasers view their worth to be conditional, believing that they are only valuable or likable if they are constantly meeting the needs of others. The major downside to this, though, is that people pleasers very often will devalue their own wants and needs, and therefore become incredibly disconnected with their own self-identity, and perhaps go as far as to resent it even. It can be very hard to love yourself then if you never allow yourself to be.
I don't even know what I want. I just want everyone to be happy. And I don't want people to hate me.
Do you hate yourself? I hated myself. I couldn't help but hate myself for the things I thought I was responsible for. I thought I'd lost everything. But then you showed up, and my outlook just changed. There are always ways to show you care without ruining yourself over it. You need to look out for yourself in all this, too.
These words hit hard for two reasons. Firstly, I find this to be a very beautiful and needed example to Ragatha that she can and does have a positive impact on people without her actively needing to try and be supportive for people. Secondly, I think this line, and this entire conversation too, shows that taking care of yourself does not only serve the purpose of deepening and developing a love for yourself, but it also serves the purpose of being there for others much more effectively. I've been talking a lot about the negatives of having people-pleasing tendencies, but there is also a lot of beauty to it too. People with these tendencies deeply care about others. They want them to feel welcomed, invited, seen. And the beauty of boundaries and communication then is that it allows you to not burn yourself out by taking on more than you should reasonably handle. You know what they say, put on your own oxygen mask before assisting others.
I didn't know you could play the piano.
I only know like 2 songs.
So, Jax is a crazy interesting character to me, and it was kind of difficult to pinpoint which scene I wanted to narrow in on to discuss his character. I was debating between either the scene where him and Pomni fight in episode 6 or his confession to Ribbit in the finale. But then, when I was rewatching the show for this video, I was reminded of the fact that it was this scene that really made me bawl my eyes out in the theater. This is the moment where, after learning everything about Jax that he has tried to keep so hidden about himself, we finally see him. We learned about his childhood traumas with his parents, how he is very deeply haunted by the last conversation he had with his mom, and the cruelty he exhibited to Ribbit. But what's so jarring about this scene is that we watch Jack acknowledge it. We start with Pomni alone in a dark void, and as she turns, she sees Jax standing in the distance by a dimly lit lamppost. There is silence as she stares at him with his back to her. That silence has so much weight to it, as we're wondering to ourselves how Pomni will react. Probably because we're also processing how we would react, how one should react. She slowly takes a step forward, and then he asks her,
Why are you here?
He sounds angry, but there's also frustration, confusion, and we watch a visual of him falling. But then he continues.
You know everything now. So why are you here? Just to rub every mistake I've ever made in my face?
I think what really draws me into this scene is how it's kind of the one and only scene where we get to hear Jack talking about how he feels about himself and how deeply he hates himself.
I'm a terrible person. Is that what you want me to say?
As he says this, there is then a visual of the memory he had when he shoved his mother off of him, and it is no coincidence that that line is paired with that visual. At this point, we have learned a lot about Jax's relationship to his parents, and how emotionally abusive their dynamics were. His father was distant from him and would suddenly lash out, and his mother would unleash all of her emotional baggage onto him. We know in particular that Jax's mom mocked him for a confession that was deeply personal to him. And as audience members, it's pretty easy for us to understand why he would shove her off of him after she hugged him, after just getting done degrading him and laughing at him for being vulnerable with her. And it's also easy for us audience members to recognize that this was not the first and only act of emotional manipulation Jax experienced from a parent. And I think somewhere along the way, through their inconsistent emotional validation, he learned that vulnerability only leads to complications, conflict, and pain. It's kind of avoidant attachment 101.
I already know I am. So why does anybody still care about me?
I think he also learned the lesson somewhere that his mistakes make him who he is, and that he is not redeemable from them. It's a perspective that led to his self-loathing, and ultimately a self-fulfilling prophecy. Believing he is irredeemable, Jax sabotages his relationships constantly. He knows that what he is doing, berating and disrespecting everyone around him, does hurt them and pushes people away from him. And I believe that this is all just one ginormous, awful coping mechanism done by projecting his self-image onto the people around him, and then acting on that projection. He copes in a very twisted way by thinking that if he can make everyone around him hate him, well then it's gonna make it a lot easier pretending like nothing and none of his actions matter.
You're not supposed to care. You're not supposed to miss me. You're not supposed to love me. This isn't how this is supposed to go. You're making this so much harder.
But Pomni breaks that entire view of himself. This view that if someone knew all who he has been, well then they would ultimately hate him. She goes from walking to him to running to him, as we see the same visual of Jax falling, but with a hand that's Pomni's reaching out to him, and then we see her hugging him from behind. I can't speak for what was going on in Jax's head in that moment, but I have this hunch that he had a horrifying and beautiful realization that he was still worthy of acceptance all along, even with all of the flaws and mistakes that made him feel irredeemable.
You're making this so much harder.
I also want to mention here the choice of color and its symbolism. After practically everything was destroyed when Cain was deleted, everything and everyone becomes desaturated, kind of representing this lack of hope amongst all of the characters. But later on, when Pomni and Ragatha have their beautiful conversation and Pomni pulls her into a hug, we see this small pink hue emerge between the two of them. To me, this color represents hope, and more specifically, hope found within people and with connection. And the next time we see this color, it's in the lamppost by Jax and becomes brighter and brighter as Pomni runs to him and then hugs him. I think the message of Jax's character is pretty commonly misunderstood, thinking that empathy is the savior of all, and that if you just empathize enough with someone, well then you can save them from any problem that they're facing. No. That, firstly, is not the purpose that empathy is supposed to serve, and to me, that is not what Jax represents. To me, he represents the idea that you cannot hope to grow or change if you do not try to change yourself, nor if you don't accept the help from people that want to help you.
You should have just talked to me, man.
It's too late. I did this to myself.
The tragedy of Jax, then, is that he refused to change and learned too late that there were always ways for him to be better, and there were always people willing to help him make that change. Okay, well, that's the end. Thank you guys so much for watching and for listening to me. I would love to know y'all's thoughts on what I talked about today, you know, whether it being adding anything to the conversations I already started or just talking about any of your own deep thoughts on this show. I really do love reading y'all's comments. Well, until next time, bye!